All right, so for example 1, we're going to graph this. What was step 1?
Look at the 8.
All right, so does our parabola here open up or down? Down. How do you know that? Because it's a negative. Good. What was step 2?
Determine the vertex.
Find the vertex. And remember, the vertex is h, comma, k. Where is the h at?
X.
It's inside parentheses with the x. It's being added or subtracted to it. Now, it's a negative 1 inside, isn't it? So what happens when you take something out of parentheses? It's going to become a positive 1. And then k, this time k is just that number at the end. Is it in parentheses? No, so k is just going to be what it is. So it's going to be a positive 4. All right, so we know it's going to open down. We've got our vertex. What was step 3? The X-Intercepts. And we do that by setting our function equal to 0. So our function was negative x minus 1 squared plus 4, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Now we got to solve for x. Where's x at? In the parentheses. So we need to get the parentheses by itself first. What is this negative in front of it? It's like a negative 1, okay? We don't distribute because of the square, but that way we know what number's there. So we have a negative 1 times the parenthesis, and we have a plus 4. Which one are we going to move first?
4.
The 4, how? Subtract it. Good. So we have a negative 1 times x minus 1 squared equals negative 4. Now what do I do to get the parenthesis by itself? Divide by negative 1. So now we've got x minus 1 squared equals positive 4. So we've got the parenthesis part by itself, but I can't get rid of the parentheses yet because of that square. How do you get rid of the square? Well, you could do FOIL, but the easiest way is going to be just go ahead and take the square root. So because remember, a square and a square root cancel. So we're left with x minus 1 equals
2.
And?
3.
No.
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus 2.
Hey.
Now remember when we did the square root of 4 with the circles, we only used positive 2 because that was a radius, right? That was a distance. And distance is always just positive. Here we're talking about X-intercepts. We can have positive and negative x's that are X-intercepts. So we have to use plus or minus. So this means we have two problems. We got x minus 1 equals negative 2. And we've got x minus 1 equals positive 2. And so we need to solve both of these for x. So we're going to add 1, and what do we get? X equals negative 1. There's one of them. Add the 1 over here, and we get x equals, which there's another one.
What?
Is that what you want on the graph?
I will in a few minutes, yes. All right, and then the last thing it tells me to find is the Y-intercept. And how do we find the Y-intercept? Yeah, plug in x is 0 and solve for y. So our function says f of x equals, but remember that's the same thing as y equals, isn't it? Get off your phones. So we got y equals negative parenthesis. We said x is going to be what? Minus 1 squared plus 4. And then you just got to remember PEMDAS. What do we do first? Parentheses. So what is 0 minus 1?
Negative 1.
Good. Squared plus 4. Then what do we do? Exponents. So you still got that negative out in front. Nothing else. That's a negative 1, isn't it? So that's negative 1 times whatever we get here. So what's negative 1 squared?
1.
And then plus 4. Then what do we do?
Multiply.
We multiply. So what's negative 1 times 1? Plus 4, which is
3.
So I have a y-intercept at 3. And then what's the very last thing we're going to do?
Graph.
We're going to graph everything. And if we need some additional points, we'll make a table to help us. But usually, you have enough right here just to do it. All right, so your vertex, first we know it's going to open down. Our vertex is at 1, 4, so go plot that point. Should be there in the first quadrant, right? Go to the right one, up 4. Then we're going to plot our x-intercepts. They're x-intercepts, that means they're on the x-axis. So plot a point where x is -1 and where x is 3. Now notice, real quick here, notice that the oops, did not mean to draw that line, sorry. The vertex there is got to be directly in the middle of those 2 points, are they?
Yes.
Or is it, I should say? It is. If not, that means we've made a mistake somewhere, okay? Your vertex is your center point. That's that line of symmetry I just drew in there. Everything is going to be equal distance on both sides. That line is going to split it in half.
How'd you get where did you draw a line in there at?
Why?
I just drew a line at the vertex to show you, okay?
4 is the K.
Yes. All right, and then we have a y-intercept at 3. So go to your y-axis and put a point at the 3. Now, if you wanted an additional point, because you know that line of symmetry right there, you could put a point over here on the right as well, but you don't have to because it's not, we've got enough without it to graph, but if you want to, you can. All right, so do you see your parabola? Can you connect the points? Kinda? Yes, I can. All right, and so there is our graph.